Well, Colin, welcome to the video and welcome everyone who's watching. Let's actually start. I just saw you drinking something that looked like a latte, and I'm curious, what's your drink of choice?
This is actually it's some weird matcha drink. Or sorry, no, it's a chai latte that has very low caffeine in it. So yeah, my go-to drink. I've tried to move off of caffeine as much as possible, and now I'm just addicted to chai lattes because they've got like a little bit of caffeine in them, but I don't feel too bad about it, and I just love the flavor.
Yeah, chai is delicious. Is it more of a sweet chai or more of a spicy chai?
It's a good balance, actually. It's Clever brand if we're going to do some marketing. I think it was like an Instagram ad that basically said, "Here's chai latte that's like low caffeine," and I was a sucker and bought it.
Instagram ads are so like OP for what they are. Like for me, for some reason, Instagram thinks that I want to buy bags, and actually I say for some reason, and the reason is that I want to buy bags. Me too. It's very effective.
Yeah.
So, as for why we're actually talking today, I wanted to hear first how you came to this crazy crypto world, what your trajectory was.
Okay, so it depends on how far back we go. I first bought Bitcoin on Coinbase. I'm a nerd, so I went back and looked at my original transactions, and it was like 2013 on Coinbase.
I was pretty bad.
It was early, and it was just like I had a smart friend who was telling me about it and basically like telling me, oh yeah, people use it on the Silk Road and all this other stuff. And then I read the Bitcoin white paper and I kind of got nerd sniped by it. And then, but all you could really do at that point was just like, hold it. There's nothing going on. And then Ethereum launched, and my buddy told me about Ethereum also. And I read that white paper and I was like, oh, this is actually like this is a completely new way of kind of interacting with other humans, right? Like now we're rethinking money, we're rethinking the way that we just like move abstract forms of value around as humans, and that's nuts. And so then I use Uniswap. And I said, well, this is ridiculous. You can just trade any asset for any other asset, and there's just like liquidity. I didn't even know, honestly, I didn't even know what the word like liquidity meant at that point, right? I was not that deep into like markets. And then I use Aave, and Aave let you just like get a loan against your money instantly. Like banks take weeks or months, and you like don't even really know how to do it if you want a loan, and you pay insane interest rates, and it's all very like opaque. And then Aave is just like you drop your Ethereum in, and now you can get 40% more Ethereum and like hold your original Ethereum and like go do stuff with it. And I just thought that was incredible that like we trust the smart contracts so much. So, anyways, I got drawn in by both Bitcoin and then really by Ethereum. But I was working in just like standard corporate jobs before that. I worked at American Express in New York City, the marketing team there. I partnered with like Uber and Airbnb and tried to make them cool. I mean, tried to make Amex cool for young people. And then I went and worked at Apple, and I was on the Apple Pay team out in San
I feel
Francisco.
like Amex is cool, so I guess you were successful.
Yeah,
That's all you're doing.
yeah. Well, yeah, that was all me. That was all me. And then I went out and worked at Apple on the Apple Pay team. So I sort of got recruited to go work out there, and then I represented Apple from the other side of the table with like Chase and Wells Fargo and all the big banks. And so I got deeper and deeper into product there. But I tried to convince both Amex and Apple to do crypto things because you'll remember that like back in 2013, I was already into this. So all these people are like, "You're absolutely insane," especially at Amex. They were like, "What are you talking about?" At Apple, the Apple Pay team, they were at least like there were some conversations about crypto. I put in a research group and we talked about crypto like once a month. Got to present to the head of Apple Pay. I said these are the 7 things that we should do, and I wrote this white paper like a giant nerd. But it was clear that we weren't actually going to build those things. Like it just wasn't. You could just tell it's too early for Apple, and it's like
Well, yeah, and arguably shouldn't have. Like, I respect
yeah,
that you were
right,
pushing for it, but
right,
it probably was too early.
yeah.
Like,
I
even
respect
now,
them. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, even now, adding crypto to Apple Pay, I think would just confuse a lot of people. I don't know.
Oh
Maybe
yeah.
maybe now there's a good way to do it with like embedded wallets and like you can abstract a lot more than, even just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, with Face ID and using the secure element as like your private key, like you could make it an amazing. If Apple decided to make it an amazing experience, they totally could. But people still hate crypto. Like to be clear, but like a
I
lot of
know.
people hate crypto.
Also, to be fair, they are totally justified because like 99% of the industry is complete garbage.
Yeah, it's like dick butts and meme coins and things like that. Yeah.
Wow, wow. Are you coming out against the dick butt?
No, I
I don't know.
hold dick butt.
Is
I'm just
cabal?
I'm a big dick butt holder. But I'm just saying normal people don't love that. And it's really hard to describe why that's okay.
I really feel like dick bite might be one of the more I could see the masses embracing dick butt because as far as I know, there's no like no one is trying to scam you. It's just like it is what it says it is.
Yeah, yeah. No more, no less. 2025 may be the year of the dick butt. But
I
anyways,
would bet against it.
so I tried to get legacy companies to do crypto things, and then I realized that wasn't going to happen. So I just wanted to get into crypto and build myself. So I started my last company, which is called Freeport. We did fractional tokenized art, so we got SEC approval after 9 months to sell tokenized physical Warhol paintings. That was nuts, and like that was my first foray into starting a company, and I realized I did everything backwards. I like tried to get regulatory approval before getting like product market fit or seeing if there's any desire for this thing.
Man, the
So
last company I worked at also got SEC approval to do not technically indexes, but very similar, like an index like product in a compliant way.
yeah,
And it's just, it's really hard to do the regulatory, like you were saying, like,
yeah,
and especially to craft, to like get to product market fit, you need to like nimbly change things around all the time
right.
in a way that does not jive very well with needing the SEC to sign off on every
Yeah.
permutation of your product.
Yeah, it's an absolute nightmare. I think the SEC needs to be like fundamentally reworked, or there needs to be a new organization or set of rules for crypto.
Well, new administration. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. Burn everything down is what seems to be happening. And then maybe rebuild to something great.
I love the optimism.
Did that hard maybe. And then, my first full time engineering hire was Ben, who's my current co founder of Ponder. So that's like, the long winded story is we started building on Farcaster. We got really, really excited to see the other builders who were there, like real people doing legit things in crypto, not just like casino nonsense or like scams and rugs and stuff. This seemed like, oh, these are legitimate people. And so we started building this little bot on Farcaster. And then that just kind of has evolved into what Ponder is today. So yeah, that's my crypto origin story.
It's interesting. You started in like the fintech side of TradFi, I would say. Wow, that's very buzzwordy. Imagine saying that to your grandma. And we haven't even, that doesn't even get to the crypto part yet, and it's already opaque.
Yeah. Well, as long as we don't have to tell my grandma about dick butt, I think it's fine.
We could save that for later. She can start with just the Apple Pay. So you started, and then it sounds like the Ethereum like open finance. Ethereum is really like it's more than open finance. It's like a reconception of how the internet can work, or it's sort of a recapitulation of the internet. And so
Oh,
that attracted you. And then
yeah.
Farcaster is like you layer social media on top of this like new internet idea.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Ethereum, the baseline to me was realizing that you can go more fundamental than money because everyone grows up, no one questions money. It's just that's how it works. That's how you transfer value. We've nailed it. The system's great. This is how we're going to do it. It's going to be issued by governments. They're going to control like, the pace at which the issuance happens. They're going to control interest rates. There's going to be all this other stuff. And that's how money's going to work. That's just how humans are going to do it. We've done it that way forever. And Ethereum came along and said, well, no, no, no. Like we can do X, Y, and Z. We can sort of have this distributed ledger. I'm just going to go into a monologue here about how amazing ETH is. But it's a fundamentally different way of transferring value, right? And then Farcaster is basically saying, cool, now we need to like weave this social fabric into crypto. So like now people have this address that's associated with who they are as a person, and you can transact and transfer that value with more of like a face and more surface area to actually engage with other people and to have your product be visible. And that's just like super, super exciting because it's weird to connect like people's ETH address to like an email address and then like try to communicate. It was just like a very fractured world, and having this decentralized social fabric sort of pull that world back together is awesome. And I think like the icing on the cake is going to be when we have ZK, so people don't have to have all of their assets be on display in association with their identity. But that's coming. That's coming soon.
Or like a non-world is kind of an interesting inversion of that where you kind of can display your assets without saying who you are at the same time.
Right. Right.
Pick and choose what you want to reveal.
Totally. Yeah.
I worked at the Zcash Foundation for a couple of years, and it's been very gratifying to see this amazing cryptography actually get used. Because at that point, it was like the technology was there, but such a small group of people realized it and it hadn't really made its way into a lot of products yet. So it's really awesome that it's now usable by end users as opposed to by like cryptographic researchers.
Yeah. The
So
technology is not
before we
going away.
oh, go.
Uh, the one thing about ZK that's most annoying is I just know how long it's going to take normal people to figure out what the fuck it is. Like, what? You can prove something without proving something? And it's like, yeah. Anyways, sorry. What was the
There's
next
yeah,
question?
there's going to be a lot of trial and error. I mean, and this applies to like all of crypto. It's been exciting. Like 2024 was really cool with like passkeys and account abstraction make it so a lot of that complexity doesn't necessarily need to be understood. Where like people who want to understand the guts of it can dig into it, but ideally you can have a safe experience without actually knowing how everything operates behind the scenes. And we're getting so close to that
Yeah.
being real.
Yeah. Yeah.
So before we talk about in-feed experiences and kind of go deeper into the Farcaster aspects, I wanted to ask, what is the so Ponder is the company and Ponder makes surveys and social predictions. Is that the right
Yeah.
relationship of entities?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess technically the company is Ponder Labs, but yeah, you can just think of it as Ponder. And historically, what we've done is just empower people to create surveys on Farcaster that go much deeper than your standard survey. So the nice thing about Farcaster is that there's all this surface area for developers to come in and do net new things or build interesting things. And polling was one of those areas that was not solved for until frames were available, the earlier frames. So we built a tool that let people create polls, answer polls, generated all the images on the fly on the front end. And then we let you like filter them in a really interesting way in the back end. So you can see if someone has like a low Farcaster ID, like if they're a Farcaster OG, or if they had a power badge before, or like we also show you where they're voting from. So you have got like location data on your poll. So things that you would never get on like a Twitter poll, because you don't have that permissionless data that you do when you're on Farcaster. So we built out sort of that polling experience. That's still live. Anyone can use our polls. I think they're still kind of like the default poll on Farcaster.
I see them frequently still.
Yeah, they pop up. Our most recent products are these social predictions, right? And social predictions you can think of as they're kind of like prediction markets, but they're not really. They're sort of deterministic. So they're based upon Keynesian beauty contests, which are this idea is effectively that you choose the option that you think most people are going to vote on, as opposed to the option that you would just vote on if you were asked a survey, right? So
For anyone who is watching this and doesn't know the reference, a Keynesian beauty contest is you have a newspaper front page that has all the different beauty pageant contestants, and you're supposed to vote, but you're not voting for the one who you personally think is the most beautiful, or you might be, but that's not what you're trying to do. You're voting for who are the most people going to vote for. So it's this really interesting exercise in determining what the Schelling point is. And sorry, keep going.
it's great. It's way better to give that example because it's a beauty contest. So the idea is that you're testing your intuition about what other people think, right? As opposed to just your preference, your personal preference. And by the way, it takes people a little bit to get there. You tell them to do this and they're like, what? Why would I do that? And you're like, just don't worry, it makes sense. But once they get it, then they're like, oh, this is actually really interesting. And I like thinking in this format. It's like, it's a new way to kind of flex your brain. So
And you
that's
have
what
a
we,
betting, like a staking and betting aspect too. So it
yeah.
has that little like financialized game as well.
Yeah, so right now there's a 50-cent entry fee, basically, and you put your entry fee in, and you need that entry fee. And anyone who signs up right now, you get $2 free, so you can just start playing with it without having to add any money. But you select your bet, or you select your option, excuse me, you put your entry fee in, the 50 cents, and then if you select the right one, then all of the pooled fees get distributed to you and anyone else that selected the right one. And the people who select the wrong one lose their 50 cents. And so that's the sort of current iteration. We're moving to V2 contracts where creators will get a portion of the pool now. And also you'll be able to bet a little bit more. So everyone will always just have one vote, but you'll be able to say, instead of 50 cents, I want to put $5 in, and then you win a larger portion of the overall pot that's been put in. So that's coming
Would
in
it be,
V2.
is it going to be proportional to like what your stake of the overall pool or
Exactly. So you basically you look at all of the funds that were from losing votes effectively, right? And then you look at all of the funds that get put in, whether it's a 50-cent bet or a $5 bet, and the proportion that you put in of all the right money is the proportion that you get of all of the wrong money, if that makes sense. So
Interesting.
that's how it works right now. And that could
Already,
lead to
like,
some really interesting outcomes, by the way. Right now, the most you can earn, like the best scenario right now is that you vote for one that gets like 28%, and then the other three get 24, 24, 24. And you basically like triple your money in that scenario. But if you start letting people put more bets in to the wrong ones, then you can actually start getting, higher multiples. So it should be fun. Sorry, what were you saying?
that, yeah, that is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But it's already really fun, and having it be integrated into notifications works really well because then you just have that reminder, like, oh, well, let me go vote in the one of the day, and then the way that you have the other live questions queued up under the vote featured one of the day, I definitely find myself like, oh, I'm gonna vote in that one. I'm gonna vote in that one. It's really fun.
Yeah. That's the hope. The hope is that it's fun. It's something that you can do every day. It's low risk compared to other things in crypto for sure. And you can actually make some money. And I think as we grow larger and larger, there are going to be bigger pools that come. And there are already people who've asked to sponsor pools for us, but we need to implement their tokens. So that's another thing that we're bringing to Contracts V2 so that like we can start to, dispense tokens from people that sponsor to a bunch of holders who engage. So there's some like fun dynamics that are going to come into play around the game.
Interesting. I mean, you can imagine a future, say, where this whole ecosystem grows, where people could make a living on like coming up with really engaging questions, say, and then being really good at determining the right answer and like doing strategic betting. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's neat. I something that I thought that just tickled me about this is how kind of all of crypto, especially this like meme coin frenzy era, is in a way a Keynesian beauty contest. Like you're trying to guess what is the asset that everybody else is going to also pile into. And I thought this was funny that it's kind of like a microcosm of that whole mindset.
That is a brilliant insight that I actually hadn't thought of until you just said that, but it's totally true. Totally true. When I look at Dick Butt, how many times am I going to bring up Dick Butt here? It's definitely the question is, well, do I think other people will think this is ridiculous enough to put a bunch of money into? And then if the answer is yes, then okay, I'll buy it.
Yeah, it is. It's funny what takes off. Like I often find it baffling, but it's like things that have enough like juice. It's like almost like intensity, like mimetic intensity or something. Like Dick Butt, like you said, is so ridiculous, and the visual is just like so distinctive. You know, the little like hot dog guy.
And then it shifts too between okay, so then Dick Butt is hot right now, and the trend that might be popular next may be dependent upon the past trend and a derivative of the past trend, or it might just be that like the population is bored of that trend entirely, and you want to go with something that's totally unrelated to that. So it's like this weird, it's like a never-ending Game of Thrones, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always something new surging up, or like with the cycle of different metas, you know? Like you said, sometimes it's like an evolution of what the last one was. Sometimes it's like, no, we're bored. I don't want to play with that anymore. I need a new.
Let's do
Yeah,
AI.
there's just novelty seeking, which is, I mean, Clanker is so well orchestrated to like be part of that cycle or like facilitate that cycle. It's been interesting watching that play out across the feed.
Yeah.
And that's something that Ponder has really like done is in feed experiences where you're taking advantage of like the social network and just that this is where people are. And it's so cool that Farcaster allows that you can distribute your app directly in the feed. Like there's no I guess maybe there was an era of Facebook where you could kind of do that,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it
And
was
those
in a
mini
way
games
that
crushed on Facebook. I mean, like Zynga came out of that, right? Like a billion dollar company that was literally just like apps built on another company.
yeah.
So there's a lot of room, and there's even more room for growth there in the Web3 space because the transactions are so natural on chain. So like, yeah, we find decentralized social to be one of the biggest opportunities that exists out there. Period. We just need the rest of the world to come around and realize that.
Yeah, it's like the having these rails, and I don't mean just the payment rails, but like you said, there's so much surface area. Having so much surface area to work with, I think is really attractive to devs. But then you have the issue, the like chicken and egg issue, where, you can build really cool experiences, but you need people to use them. And then, people get disillusioned. I don't know. Like it's where the growth is going to come from on a consumer level is difficult. Like the whole, when mass adoption thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something we were talking about at Splits a couple of days ago that like the top of funnel for all of crypto is like gambling, and like it's not ideal in some ways.
Yeah. And then those people scare other people away who might have wanted to do normal things who are just like, no, I don't want to be associated with that.
Yeah. And I'm not entirely against gambling, and I think there's like speculation has there's all these like novel ways that you can speculate. Like say Ponders or social predictions is an example of this. Like I don't think that's a like toxic or life destroying I mean, I guess in
This would be a
theory,
weird call
but
if you did it.
if you're successful enough, maybe someone will put their life savings
To be
in.
fair, yeah. I mean, you never know. But Angry Birds is probably also toxic and life destroying for some very small subset of people.
Oh, I mean, mobile games, definitely. I mean, that's a big like societal question that I don't know if it will ever be resolved. It's like if you make a fun experience available, that if you get really addicted and like go way too hard on it, you'll ruin your life. Like alcohol is a great example of this. Like most people who drink just drink in a like completely healthy, like social, fun way. But like by volume, there's this small subset of people who drink way, 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 way too much.
Yeah, the long tail on the curve always gets iffy in basically anything that we do.
Well, I guess there's nothing we can do, but like that's just depressing. But it is what it is. On a more like a less people ruining their lives kind of note, can you talk about your experience with going from Frames V1 to Frames V?
Totally, yeah. Frames Rewind, just sucked. I mean, they were bad. It was a great attempt by the Farcaster team to like see what happens when you give service area to developers. When you have this like sort of pass through area, and then they saw that there was enough interest from developers and there was enough sort of spark that like, okay, we should go deeper on this. And I think that's proven to be a fantastic success. Like if you look at Clankermon, if you look at, I mean, Ponder, if you look at some of the, like Farcade as an example, is just absolutely blowing up. So there's a lot more that developers can do. You can have like movement, and you don't have a stupid little thing that caches your information and it like stays stuck for 10 minutes, and then you have to like reload the cache. Like it's kind of a goddamn nightmare, Frames V1. But they opened the door to something bigger. So we're really, really happy about Frames V2. The thing for developers to be aware of, though, in Frames V2 is you are, previously in Frames V1, you took the action in the feed. So now you have to you take the action of going to the V2 frame first, and then you take the action, like the actual, you used to be able to like transact in the V1 frames, or I guess you still can, but it was bad. So there is a little bit of extra friction that comes along with that, but you do have your own cozy little place. Like once people get into your V2 frame, well then nice. Now you can present them with your full experience, and you kind of want to like keep them in there and make sure that you're providing value for the time they spend in there. And then you have to think about how you have that contained experience that's all within your V2 frame bleed out into the social feed. And this is something that we're still trying to perfect without me just seeming like I'm spamming predictions all day. It's like what I
Mm,
do. So
yeah,
finding novel ways to naturally let it spill out into the feed is important.
I
But
was
they're
actually
also
thinking about that while I was while I was doing my predicting this morning. That I don't. You may have like tooling for this in the frame that I just didn't notice or that like didn't hook me. But I would want to be able to like share. Like, I just voted on this prediction or whatever, so that it can then bleed out into the feed.
we have a
Although
little
I'm not
share button, but it's like so well designed that it just like looks good there rather than is very apparent, if that makes sense.
like it's too good.
Well, it's like, you can make something pretty but not noticeable, if that makes sense. That's probably true for our share button.
Well, and then so if I click the share button, does it then take me out of the frame?
Yeah, what it does right now is it's almost like it pops up another shelf and you can just copy the link basically. And then if you drop that link in Warpcast, it will make another little mini frame for you that shows the prediction. We actually need to work on this because it's a really cool feature, but no one's using it right now. So we need to figure out how to like,
You got to make that button more janky so that people are like, oh, what's that?
yeah, click here. Cool.
Well, what do you think about, we touched on this briefly, the need for growth? And this is something that Dan has been talking about a lot, is like just needing to bring more people over into the Farcaster world. And I guess there have been like a couple of things that have caused growth, like Degen
Mhm.
was definitely one,
Mhm.
Clanker kind of to some extent. It's not clear how many people are joining just to make a token versus joining to like participate in the network. What are your thoughts on this as a Farcaster developer?
Yeah, it's always, there have been these massive incremental bumps in users and then sort of like a fading afterwards, right? So I think when Frames initially came out, there was a big bump actually. And then Degen, when that came out, there was a big bump in users. So things like that definitely drive attention. Clanker didn't, it blows my mind actually, the market cap of Clanker plus all the Clanker tokens that came from Farcaster and the disconnect between the number of people that came to Farcaster after that. When Degen happened, like there were like 80,000 people that showed up, right, immediately after. And it was because they wanted to figure out how to get a piece of like this crazy token that's making a bunch of money. It didn't happen so much for Clanker. So I do think there's probably a lingering thought from people outside of Farcaster, let's say the rest of the crypto crowd, that Farcaster is a certain way and it's like maybe hard to get into, or maybe people don't want to have to reset their roots, right? And network effects are really strong. So it's hard to do that. What we've always found really valuable about Farcaster though is that the people who are here, there are people that have like never left, and there are people who are here that are just like wildly helpful. Like you could, you know how there are 10x engineers or 100x engineers or developers? These are like 10x users or like 100x users. They'll give you a bunch of feedback. They'll try shit and they'll tell you when it's broken. They won't just like kind of sit there. They'll DM you and ask questions, right? They'll DM you and just like give you recommendations. And all of that is like super, super valuable. So when you're a builder and you'd really just need like 50 people using your product to get good feedback and to hone it and make sure that it's like really hitting all the right spots for users, it's perfect for that. That might go away when there are 10 million people in Farcaster because people will feel less obliged to sort of help the builders, right? To sort of support them because it's like, well, now there's this massive network. I'm just like a tiny little minnow in the sea. Right now, everyone feels like, hey, at least I'm a fish in the pond. I'm a fish in the pond. So there's something magical about the current state. We as developers do, like, we look at Farcaster as right now, this can only be a launch pad. Like we have to have a Telegram experience or a web app experience that we drive to from Twitter eventually. But Farcaster is just such like there's such good people, there's such high value in the people that are here that you can really hone a product well. It's like a little furnace, you know, then you're just like
Mm.
melting incredible swords in there and then like you can go see how they do in the wild. That's
Go
how
wield
excited
your
we
sword elsewhere.
Yeah. Now, ideally, Farcaster just blows up. I can't wait for that meta to shift, and I do believe it's going to shift. But you kind of have to not plan for that, right? As a developer.
Yeah. Well, and especially you don't know when it's going to happen. Like even if we all see that Farcaster definitely has that potential, and that at some point, someone's going to come up with an experience that unlocks a bunch of growth, the way that Degen did. But when it's going to happen, who knows?
Right. Right. They do have a lot of money. They have $150 million just sitting around. I'll be really
I'm
curious to see how they spend that, if they spend that.
I am glad that they have, a lot of runway. And there is. So, do you have an opinion on the should Farcaster or should Merkle like hire someone to do marketing or?
My background is in marketing. That's what I did. But I don't think that I think that the Merkle crew is like the most well-disciplined crew that I've ever seen build a product of any sort. Like Dan has principles, he sticks to his principles. He really needs to be convinced if he's going to change his mind, but then he will change his mind if he is convinced. People have been beating this drum for a long enough time that I could see him caving a little bit and saying, okay, like I'm going to spend some money that I normally wouldn't spend. He did this once before with Coinbase. He gave people like $10 worth of optimism when they signed up via Coinbase. And the results were just like a lot of churn, I think, like not high quality users. Granted, the app also didn't have a lot of cool shit going on back then, right? And now
Hmm.
there's more. I actually gave him the feedback of, hey, maybe you should spend some money, drive people to the app with that money, give them, if there's an embedded wallet, give them a few bucks to use the apps that are now here. Like if there's something that people are going to do every day, like, I don't know, maybe answer a Ponder prediction, well, like onboard them, drop them directly into that app and get them, like sort of in this cycle of like getting notified and like deciding to use things every day. Or maybe it's Farcade. It doesn't have to be Ponder. It should be, but it doesn't have to be Ponder. So anyways, like long-winded way of saying he's tried some of these marketing things before and he's sort of gotten burnt. And I think he has this core thesis that the product itself needs to be super valuable. The content needs to be strong and perpetual. And without those things, it doesn't matter how many people you bring in top of funnel because they're all just going to leave. I do think that with social networks, like having a bunch of people is part of the product actually. So like even if it's fake it till you make it, like, if he gets 2 million people to join for 3 months, I think just the residual, like, okay, maybe 400,000 stick around, like that is going to benefit the network greatly. So I would probably take a little more risk than Dan. I don't know if like a growth marketer is the right solution, but I would be willing to take like a $1 to $5 million bet to sort of drive a lot of users into the ecosystem. I'd need to figure out like, what I have conviction on. But it's not clear that like one individual person is going to solve this problem. And imagine the pressure on that person too. Okay, you're the growth person. Take us from 700,000 users to 7 million users. It's all on you. And everyone's going to think you're the failure if it doesn't work. Like, that's not fun. I don't
Yeah,
think I'd want.
especially after this has been such a, like an ongoing conversation. You're right. If they did finally hire someone, that would be it's all on your shoulders now.
Right. Yeah. Good luck. GLHF. Good luck. Have fun. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
That is the thing about so I do think Dan's point that you were talking about that like if you are just bringing people in top of funnel but you don't have retention, then you're just kind of burning money. I also agree with you that the more like network effects very real. Like the more people are in the network, the more valuable the network is, and it is potentially like or it could potentially be worth kind of overpaying to expand the network just because there's like a you need to get a ball rolling kind of thing going on there. Where was I going with this? There was some point that I was getting to that I
We were
lost along the
solving
way.
we were solving all of Dan's problems for him on this call.
I was about to fix it all and then
Yeah,
it's just gone.
that's all right. We'll get it on the next call.
Yeah. Well, we kind of covered, all the my list of things that I wanted to make sure we discussed. Is there anything else that's on your mind that you're thinking about at the moment about this ecosystem?
I'm as excited as ever for it. Honestly, like I haven't there all the projects that are coming out, people are starting to design things that look good. If you look at Farcade or like Clankermon, there's actually like some effort being put in to have things not just look like absolute horseshit. And that's exciting. That means that like there's enough conviction from developers and the developers are good enough to make products that are like consumer ready. So I see that coming down the pipeline. I'm pumped about it. I can't wait for the next million people to join Farcaster. And yeah, I think like people should all go check out Ponder and everything that we're doing in the app. They should also go check out Splits, by the way. Splits is fucking
Oh
awesome.
yeah, I
So,
agree. I think they should both Ponder and Splits are just paragons of Farcaster virtue. Not that actually Splits doesn't really do anything, like in the Farcaster feed or whatever, but we kind of feel like we're part of the scene because both so many Splits users are, in this Farcaster world. And then there's like a philosophical, it's the word I'm looking for, um, a philosophical match between this Farcaster ethos, which is really like it's the Ethereum ethos.
right,
And there's
right.
so many people on crypto Twitter who are missing out. Like it's just this is the dream. They don't know.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Frame by frame.
Frame by frame, frame by frame. Exactly, exactly.
Well, thanks for taking the time to chat. This was fun.
Yeah, this is great. Appreciate it, Sonia. We'll talk soon.